The mahogany table in my father's study had never looked longer than it did that morning. I sat at one end, watching my stepmother Diane arrange herself at the head like a queen preparing to address her subjects. My younger brother Kyle slouched beside her, scrolling through his phone with the casual indifference of someone who knew exactly what was coming. "Shall we begin?" Mr. Garrett, the family lawyer, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency. The will reading. 3 weeks after Dad's heart attack, and here we were, dividing up a life. Diane's manicured fingers drummed against the table. She'd been married to my father for 4 years. Long enough to redecorate the house, but not long enough to erase the memory of my mother from every corner. At least not for me. "The last will and testament of Robert Chun," Mr. Garrett began, his voice formal and detached. "Dated March 15th, 2023. I noticed Diane's small smile. March 15th. 2 days after Dad's diagnosis. 2 days after the doctors told us the cancer had spread too far, too fast. To my beloved wife, Diane Chun, I leave the house, all financial accounts, investment portfolios, and personal property within, with the following exceptions." My stomach tightened. Here it came. "To my son, Kyle Chun, I leave Chun Industries, to be managed in trust by Diane Chun until his 25th birthday." Kyle didn't even look up from his phone. Of course not. He'd known this was coming. At 22, he'd inherit a company worth $40 million. The company my father built from nothing. The company I'd worked at every summer since I was 16. "To my daughter, Sarah Chun." Diane's smile widened. "I leave my personal library." The words hung in the air. I waited for more. There had to be more. "The books," I said, when the silence stretched too long. "Just the books." Mr. Garrett looked uncomfortable. "I'm afraid so, Miss Chun. Your father's collection, approximately 3,000 volumes, including first editions valued at." "The books," I repeated, tasting the betrayal. 7 years of being told I was too young to understand the business. 7 years of when you're older. 7 years of promises that evaporated into 3,000 dusty volumes. "Your father loved those books," Diane said, her voice dripping false sympathy. "He knew you'd appreciate them. You were always such a scholarly child." I looked at her, really looked at her. The designer dress, the diamond earrings my mother used to wear, the satisfied gleam in her eyes. Then I smiled. "Thank you," I said calmly. "I'll treasure them." Kyle finally looked up, surprised by my reaction. Diane's eyes narrowed slightly, suspicious of my easy acceptance. "Well," Mr. Garrett shuffled his papers. "That concludes." The conference room door opened. Mrs. Patterson, my father's secretary for 30 years, stepped inside. Her orthopedic shoes squeaked against the hardwood, and she clutched a manila envelope to her chest. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, though she didn't look sorry at all. "But there's something you need to see." "We're in the middle of a private meeting," Diane snapped. "Whatever it is can wait." Mrs. Patterson had worked for my father since before I was born. She'd seen him build his empire, seen him mourn my mother, seen him make the mistake of marrying Diane. She ignored my stepmother completely. When Mr. Chun asked me to clean out the safe last month, I found this. She placed the envelope on the table. It's dated April 2nd, 2023. 2 weeks after the will we'd just read. My pulse quickened. "What is this?" Diane's voice had lost its smugness. "Another will," Mrs. Patterson said simply. "Properly notarized and witnessed." I was one of the witnesses. Mr. Garrett reached for the envelope with shaking hands. "This is highly irregular. I should have been notified. Mr. Chun specifically asked that this be kept in the safe until after the reading of the first will," Mrs. Patterson continued. "He said you'd understand why when you read it." "This is ridiculous," Diane stood up. "Robert wasn't in his right mind. The medication, the pain." "Sit down, Diane." The voice that came from my mouth surprised everyone, including me. "Let him read it." Mr. Garrett opened the envelope and unfolded the document inside. His eyes widened as he scanned the pages. This appears to be legitimate," he said slowly. "The witnesses, the notary seal, and it does supersede the previous will." "Read it," I said. He cleared his throat. "The last will and testament of Robert Chun, dated April 2nd, 2023. I, Robert Chun, being of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke all previous wills and declare this to be my final testament." Diane had gone very pale. I spent 2 weeks after my diagnosis watching my family, watching how they reacted to my impending death. What I saw broke my heart and opened my eyes in equal measure. Mr. Garrett paused, glancing at each of us before continuing. To my wife, Diane Chun, who spent those 2 weeks meeting with financial advisors and real estate agents, already planning her new life, I leave exactly what she brought to our marriage. Nothing. Diane gasped. He can't. Please don't interrupt, Mr. Garrett said firmly. To my son Kyle, who couldn't be bothered to visit his dying father because of a music festival, I leave my collection of vintage records. Perhaps music will teach him what I could not, that some things are more valuable than money. Kyle's phone clattered to the table. To my daughter, Sarah Chun, who spent every moment she could by my side, who read to me when I couldn't sleep, who never once asked about inheritance but only about my stories, my memories, my life. To her, I leave everything else. Chun Industries, the house, all financial accounts and assets. The room exploded. This is fraud, Diane screeched. She manipulated him. He wasn't thinking clearly. He seemed perfectly clear to me, Mrs. Patterson said calmly. Clear enough to predict exactly how you'd react. He even recorded a video message if you'd like to see it. I'll contest this, Diane snarled. I'll fight this in court. With what money? I asked quietly. Dad's accounts are frozen during probate. Unless you have secret funds somewhere. Her face went from pale to red. Kyle, tell them. Tell them how your sister poisoned him against us. But Kyle was staring at me with something like wonder. You never asked him for anything. Even when he offered to pay off your student loans, you refused. I wanted time with him, I said simply. Not his money. The video, Diane demanded. Play the video. I want to see this supposed message. Mrs. Patterson produced a tablet from her bag and set it on the table. My father's face filled the screen, gaunt but alert, propped up in his hospital bed. If you're watching this, he said, his voice raspy but firm, then Mrs. Patterson has done as I asked. Diane, Kyle, I gave you both a chance. I wrote that first will to see what you'd do when you thought you'd won. He coughed, then continued. Diane, you celebrated. You called your sister to brag. You made an appointment with a realtor to sell the house my first wife died in. The house where Sarah grew up. You thought I was too sick to notice, but morphine doesn't make you deaf. Diane's perfectly composed face crumbled. Kyle, you had 4 years to show interest in the company. Any interest at all. Instead, you talked about selling it the moment it became yours. Easy money, you called it. My life's work. Kyle wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. But Sarah, Dad's voice softened. Sarah asked me to tell her about her mother. About how I started the company. About my father, who she never met. She held my hand during the chemo. She never once mentioned the will. Tears blurred my vision. So I'm leaving it all to the only person who valued me more than my money. Sarah, sweetheart, I know this will be a shock. But you're ready. You've always been ready. I was just too stubborn to see it. He looked directly at the camera. Diane, Kyle, you get exactly what you gave me in my final days. Nothing of substance. And if you're thinking of contesting this will, know that I've left a detailed account of your actions with my lawyer. Date-stamped texts, recorded conversations, security footage of you celebrating my diagnosis. Try to take this from Sarah, and it all becomes public. The video ended. The silence in the room was suffocating. Then Diane grabbed her purse and stormed out, her heels clicking furiously against the floor. Kyle followed more slowly, pausing at the door. Sarah, he started. Later, I said. We'll talk later. When they were gone, I turned to Mrs. Patterson. You knew all along. She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in years. Your father was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. He knew exactly who loved him and who loved his money. Why the charade? Why not just write one will? He needed to be sure, Mr. Garrett said, finally finding his voice. Both about them and about you. If you'd gloated about the books, celebrated their misfortune. The second will would never have appeared, I finished. Mrs. Patterson nodded. He said you'd understand, that you'd handle it with grace, just like your mother would have. I thought about the library I'd inherited in the first will. 3,000 books I'd read to my father during his final weeks. Each one a memory, a conversation, a moment when it was just us. No money, no company, no inheritance. Just a father and daughter sharing stories. I would have been happy with just the books, I said honestly. And that, Mrs. Patterson said, is exactly why you got everything else. The next months were a whirlwind. Diane tried to contest the will, but Dad's evidence was overwhelming. The court battle lasted exactly 1 hearing before the judge dismissed her claim. She left town shortly after, moving in with her sister in Florida. Kyle surprised me. After the initial shock wore off, he came to see me. We talked, really talked, for the first time in years. He admitted he'd been relieved when he thought he'd inherit the company, and even more relieved now that he hadn't. I never wanted it, he confessed. But Dad and Diane kept pushing, kept saying it was my birthright as the son. I just wanted to make music. I kept the vintage records from his inheritance, but gave him enough money to pursue his dreams. He's in Nashville now, actually making a go of it. We text sometimes. It's not a perfect relationship, but it's honest. Chun Industries thrived under my leadership. Turns out all those summers working there, all those conversations with Dad about business philosophy, all those lessons I absorbed while he thought I wasn't ready, they'd prepared me better than any MBA could have. I kept the house too. Not out of spite, but because it held my memories. Mom's garden still blooms every spring. Dad's library, where I'd inherited everything and nothing all at once, became my favorite room. Mrs. Patterson retired last year, but not before training her replacement and making sure I knew every secret the company held. On her last day, she handed me one final envelope. "Your father left this for you," she said, "to be opened when you were ready." Inside was a letter, written in Dad's shaky handwriting. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then you've proven what I always knew, but was too afraid to admit, that you are the true heir to everything I built. Not because of blood or birth order, but because you understand what really matters. The books were never just books. They were every conversation we never had, every lesson I failed to teach, every I love you I was too busy to say. But you heard them anyway. I'm proud of you. Mom would be proud of you. Love always. Dad." I keep that letter in my desk drawer at Chun Industries. Some days, when the weight of running a multimillion-dollar company feels too heavy, I read it again. It reminds me that I inherited more than money or businesses or houses. I inherited the knowledge that love isn't measured in what you're willing to take, but in what you're willing to give. And sometimes the best inheritance is discovering that the person you loved knew your worth all along, even when they pretended otherwise. The books still line the walls of Dad's library. 3,000 volumes that were almost my only inheritance. I've read them all now, every single one. Because that's what you do with gifts of love. You treasure them.